item tonight is our Parks and Rec Commissioner, Chris Biles, is going to give us an update on the expression of interest process for the bar and restaurant at Sandbar. So, Karen is sinking beneath the screen. Thank you, Karen. Chris, I'm going to hand the time to you.
Everybody should have a copy of this. So, just to start, this is obviously follow-up to our last update, which took place back in the summer, the end of June 23rd. Just as a refresher, or reminder, kind of how what that overview entailed was. The town board had indicated that occupant of the building, the restaurant or the bar, should cover any cost of that bond for construction of that building. In other words, no subsidy would cover that from the taxpayers. Originally, you recall, there was an estimate for a facility down there around $1 million, which was used as the initial sort of figure. That's how the initial, we're correctly, that's not the correct term on the agreement standpoint. But that would basically be around $7,500 a month, and consider using the factor that no subsidy from taxpayers that's good. So that $7,500 on a $1 million bond would be an increase from the previous run of around $3,500 a month, based on owners not interested or not excited about paying that large monthly payment. At that time, during this presentation, it was also kind of agreed that from the town board that we would look into what an actual cost might be, more realistic, because that $1 million figure that we had been using was part of the initial Sandbar Park project, really not validated in regards to what it entailed and what money to have $1 million. So it was agreed upon in June that we would do a little deeper dive into how what a cost might actually be. Fast forward into August, Tom began working on campus construction. We met several times during the month of August and September. Basically what we were looking for is a more drilled down cost from a finance standpoint, just from an estimate of building the shell based on the designs and the discussions that we were having with the Bayside owners and the images that had been submitted as part of that expression of interest. We also had requested that the cost for constructing, again, when I say shell, that being structure, not interior finishes, but that would include some infrastructure that the town would require, things like fire alarm system, general power, lighting, etc. Just because of the design and the overall construction of the shell would sort of necessitate those type of features being installed. Obviously, it didn't get down to where finishing touches, etc., because that would be out of the applicant. So that was through August into September when we received from campus. The good news was that the estimate was not as significant as the $1 million figure that had been used. It was closer to $715,000 again for that shell, along with those required infrastructure features. Using that figure, we Paul Adams requested Municipal Solutions sort of a payout in regards to how we would figure the rent. Again, remember this type of bond is a different type of bond. It's not a 30-year. It actually has a 15-year payout. So it's structured a little differently. Interest is a little different. So with that factored in, Municipal Solutions gave us the information. It'd be around $6,000. Again, less than that $7,500 again per month. Originally using that $1 little bit less, but still more from a monthly cost standpoint than what was previous. But again, staying true to the occupant covering the cost of the bar. Fast forward into October, met again with the Bayside the restaurant owners to discuss their expression of interest, as well as the restaurant estimate that we received for campus, as well as what the process would entail to continue on in regards to the construction of that facility. Because as you know, that the building of that facility was not included in the Sandbar project. We're currently under, that would be a separate process, separate bond, etc. We require all the steps that are on this slide that we shared with Bayside owners, consultant selection, seeker, as we just heard, not to mention, and then obviously the permit process, various agencies that are part of that, design and development of the bidding, and then bond approval. So this process we do along with some of the construction schedule that we were aware of in regards to settling and fill, et cetera, at that location. That 2023 became an unrealistic expectation, so we shared that as well with Bayside owners that realistically this is a 2024. This is the expectation in regards to when the facility can be done or built in operation. We also discussed as part of that meeting having a deposit to be able to start this process so we can work towards a 2024 opening. In other words, again, we started from a schedule standpoint, at least in regards to that deposit, it was really structured around the fact that if we weren't able to get to some sort of agreement contractually between lawyers or something put in writing in regards to how the process was going to work, then that deposit would obviously be returned fully back to the Bayside owners. However, it also protected the town that if construction did start, we got into this process and we got to the point that the facility had been, or the shell had been designed, we've gone through this process, construction had begun. If there was a reason to be, for the owners to back out for any reason, this would allow the town to continue to, deposit would stay with the town. That way there we would have some assurances that we can move forward with trying to find somebody else to be able to go into that facility that obviously was designed and sort of laid out by the previous, through the previous process. We did ask that the Bayside owners would sort of give us a response as to how they wanted to proceed. Obviously, because of, as I showed earlier, the number of steps that we needed to go through, we were looking to get some sort of a finalized answer rather than continuing to meet. We wanted to get this process started from a formal process standpoint. So we asked for an answer by the end of October. We did get an answer on our date of October 28th that we had established. The Bayside owners had indicated at that point that they were out. Listed the items that were in their email that they sent to us. Obviously, an uncertain run amount, and again, that's depending on how the bid process played out. So unfortunately, we can't give an exact number because obviously that process needs to be followed in order for us to know what the cost is going to be for that facility. Size of the building being unknown. Again, because of the permitting process, we know that 2,400 square foot, as we've shared all along, is the maximum size. There is a chance that the DEC or the state could come back and say that 2,400 square foot can't be used and has to be approximately 1,600 of the original Bayside. It seemed like Bayside, based on their expression of interest, were sort of in the direction of that 2,400. So again, that's an unfortunate, but that's a reality of the process that we're following. Then obviously the amount of the deposit was too significant for them, so it was another one of their factors for So at this point, basically what we're looking at now from a town standpoint is what we'd like to do. ideally is to reach out, back out to the entities that had expressed some interest in that original EOI, to be able to reach out and see if there is still some interest on their end. We did have some informal discussions in regards to what some thoughts and processes might be for down there. And then we did a discussion with a selected vendor that may best suit that. And that brings us to that.
Thank you, Chris. Questions for Chris?
Well, it's unfortunate that because the Bayside owners decided not to move forward, it kind of leaves us in a difficult position if we want to construct a building out for some kind of restaurant or the only way we're going to find out if that happens is to go out and make inquiries. And see if anyone can come in and wish to take this project out.
To that point, there were a number of restaurateurs, I guess you would say, that had expressed interest in the building early on, and then at some point, they chose not to continue the process, right?
Correct.
That's correct, right? So, as a town, are we going to reach back out to those same restaurateurs to see if they may still be interested in moving forward?
And that was the thought is, obviously, and again, rough numbers. I want to say it was around a dozen, 10 to 12 they had initially, and when I say 10 to 12 legitimate restaurateurs, we had a number of individuals that had expressed interest, but just from a general restaurateur operation, we had around 10 to 12, I believe it was, that expressed initial interest, downloaded the EOI, and sent in questions during that process. And then for whatever reasons, that they had, they backed up. But the thought would be, yeah, go back to those groups and say, is there an interest at this point for them? Maybe there's a change in how they see that area or see this opportunity now compared to 7 months ago. That's the thought.
It's like the rental lodge and rent it out for people instead of restaurant.
So I know originally that was one of the thought processes that was down there. To be honest with you, we haven't gone back to that option at this point. We haven't even had any internal discussions on if that was an option. I have some thoughts as to whether or not that's the best interest for that location and that kind of structure. But at this point, we're focused on operating as a restaurant.
Chris, since you and I have been at the table for all of this, have any questions? I've been at the table with you for all of this. But I said earlier in this meeting that you come to one of these 1 hour meetings, we try to do a nice summary, and there's so many other things that happen behind the scenes. So I just wanted to add a little color to something, kind of from the last page that you had of the presentation. You said, in the town of Webster, would like to revisit all the entities who share their feedback. A couple things that I think everybody should understand is that in November of 21, we started the process of putting together a citizen committee, volunteers. We didn't pick them. They volunteered. Chris led them. What do we want to see in a restaurant bar down at Sandbar Park? From that, we built the expression of interest, the EOI. Between January and March of 2022, that expression of interest based on a dozen different restaurateurs, legitimate ones, not, Jim and Mary who say, I do a great barbecue in my backyard and I'd like to do a restaurant out there. We discounted them pretty quickly. The people that called into us, these are sophisticated bar and restaurant owners. They were the ones who actually created, Chris, our 3 amendments to the EOI. And Then on April 8th, the deadline this year for submitting formal expression of interest, the Bayside owners were the only ones that formally submitted. Because we had had so much interaction with a dozen or so of these restaurateur bar owners, a little pseudo exit interview. Why did you not submit? Well, we heard the Bayside owners were submitting. We figured it was a done deal. It's not an unrealistic statement on their part. As the months went on, and I really believe, Chris, that the interaction in meetings, 4 or 5 meetings with the Bayside owners, the town investing resources into coming up with what was more of a better number instead of that $1 million pulled out of the air for the shell and vanilla box. I think we put our best foot forward to try to get exact numbers. I know that the Bayside owners said this seems like it's a putting the cart before the horse. The sequence of these things doesn't seem right. I agree with it. The fact that we don't know what to say until the DEC tells us how big of a spot we can put down there, yeah, as a business owner, that is odd to me. But you and I were the messengers of that. And we tried to be very forthcoming with that. And never, so as you go back, and I'm almost done, is that I was surprised, and you touched on it a little bit, through all of the interaction, the fact, and this is all public knowledge, the expression of interest that everybody should have seen by now, if we posted it, whatever. The Bayside owners were, at least in their expression of interest, going to put up to $700,000 of infused, you can call it what you want, leasehold improvements, finishing the interior, whatever. And we always went down the path of having campus look at designing a shell based on vision that the Bayside owners gave us in their expression of interest. I was surprised that as these numbers were somewhat of an issue, why not suggest a smaller building? It's going to be less cost for the town, for the bond, and my guess would be that it would be less cost to build the interior. And, everything they've always said, and the pro formas showed it, once again, in the expression of interest, it's all there for everybody to see. This isn't going to be a real revelation to everybody. Between Memorial Day and Labor Day is when the majority of revenue is produced at that place. It's an outdoor place. So I was surprised they didn't suggest a smaller piece, a smaller footprint, and maybe elaborate a little bit more on the outside. But that wasn't Chris and my place to say to them. We were trying to cater to their vision. Last but not least, and I appreciate how you put it in here, Chris, in this presentation. Like I just said, it's $700,000 was what was in the expression of interest of what the Bayside owners said that they were willing to infuse into leasehold improvement, whatever you want to say. The deposit terms that Chris described, I want to just make sure everybody understands this. He said, you'll put a $100,000 deposit, good faith money, in your attorney's trust account. Not yours, Charlie. You're the attorney for the town, but in the Bayside owner's attorney's trust account. The goal was, by November 1st, you will enter into discussions between your attorney, Bayside, the tenant, licensee, whatever you call it, and the landlord, the town. If Charlie and our legal team and Bayside's legal team can't, within 60 days, work out the details, we just can't work out the details, then take your freaking $100,000 as of December 31st, no harm, no foul, we move on. However, if the town goes along our primrose path and builds a structure that is the vision of the Bayside owners, their vision, not ours, not another restaurant owner's vision, If we build that and go and put $700,000 into it, and now we're like, well, we're pretty much done now, it's time to hand the baton to you guys to go in and finish it, and you say, things have changed. Fill in the blank. I'm moving to Florida, another business subject. I'm out. That's your choice. But you're going to leave that $100,000 with the town. They were very adamantly against that, were they not, Chris? And I'm going to tell you something. Maybe I'm an unreasonable guy, but what I just explained to everybody, and it's on tape, I've been in business for 30 years. I thought that was extremely fair. Extremely fair. You've heard me say this before many times. I agree to disagree a lot with people. The owners of Bayside and Chris and I agree to disagree on that point. Now, unspoken in this presentation, which will now be up there. Legally, Charlie, we looked at you and we said, okay, we got a situation. Do we really need to go back to some formal RFP and expression of interest and recreate the wheel that we did back in November of 21 through March of 22? Or can we go out to the usual suspects who, one, already pinged us a ton during this process, leading up to April 8th, and two, have tried to reach out to Chris and I to say, hey, how's it going? I got some great ideas down there. And Chris and I have stood our ground on this and said, look, we can't talk to you. We need to finish this process with the Bayside owners. They're the ones that submitted. And we need to, in good faith, go down the path with them. And if we come to an agreement and we move forward, then we all live happily ever after. And I would have been thrilled. Those guys have been down there for 20 years. So it was the right thing, and I think it was also the legal thing to not deal with those other suitors who now wanted to, talk to us. Now that they saw, wow, you guys are doing a lot of construction down there, this place is going to be cool. I guess what we're looking for from the board, Charlie had already told us that based on what we've done, I don't put words in your mouth, but there's really no reason to go back to an RFP at this point, an expression of interest. We reach out to the people that pinged us so much back in that December of last year to March of 22 and let them know, okay, we finished the process with the one submitter, it didn't work out, you want to sit down and talk. And to me, the lessons learned over the last 7 months in this process, understanding the Mary Harrington, you put together a beautiful sequence of events. You have it written in here. It was eye-opening. The bureaucratic nature of New York State, I hope I don't get in trouble for that, but we were very honest with the Bayside owners and said, look, even if the town tried to move heaven and earth and I was Jesus Christ himself, there's no way that you're going to be open for business in 23. There's just too many cooks in the kitchen that have to do Army Corps, DEC, and all this stuff. It's not going to happen. Helical pilings, letting the fills settle, all that. Best case, you're open for business in 24. And I hope that is going to be what we do. I think that pretty much kind of surprised them too, Chris, when we met with them.
Yeah, I think.
But we were the messengers, and we gave them the sequence of events. So, does the town board have any problem with Chris and myself reaching? Thank you, John. And we will keep everybody apprised of how that. Yeah, oh, that's right. I should finish the question. Does the town board have any problems with this next steps that we reach back out to the ones who had shown interest and start discussions with them to see what their vision is? Bill?
We need to find something that will go down there that's suitable for the town.
Right. Charlie, you already gave me your legal.
I'll say nothing.
Okay. Dennis, Jenny?
I want to thank Chris for all the time that he put into this. And I think it's been a very exhaustive process. You know, a lot of the things that we do, sometimes I feel like we're building a plane while we're flying it.
Yes.
And this has been one of those. But I'm happy to see that there's been a decision made, because a lot of people come up to all of us, whether we're in a grocery store, the doctor's office, at the post office in town, what's happening with the Bayside? What's happening with the Bayside? And I'm glad that a decision has finally been made. I'm sorry that they chose not to be involved in this project, but I agree with Councilman Abbott that we need to move forward and put something down there, because obviously there's been a very well-heard cry from the public that they would like a facility.
And Patty, I want to make something very clear. The email that we got from them on the 28th saying, we're out. Our formal letter to them a couple weeks later was, we understand why, but the door is still open. You know, if they want to come back, maybe they hear this and say, geez, I guess I never thought, maybe we should look at 60 square feet. So it would change things. I'm not closed-minded to that. I would ask one other favor before we part tonight. Paul, can I ask you to come up and just give a finance director's rendition of, because there's been a lot of ambiguity or a lot of questions. Why is it a special bond? And I'd like you to, it's a special bond. We found this out from our bond counsel, probably 15, 18 months ago. This project, when we did the bonding for the park, phase 1 through 3, we never did the bonding for the structure that will be the bar restaurant.
That's correct.
Why, what did we find out? Why is it a special bond that can only be done 15-year amortization, not 30 years?
Yeah, because it's basically a public-private partnership with a private enterprise involved, the bond has to be a taxable bond. Typically, our serial bonds are tax-free for New York State and for the federal government. But since it involves a private enterprise, it's a taxable bond. I believe the maximum we can do is 15 years, and it has to be done with a separate bond resolution. So that resolution has not been done yet.
We don't know how much we do it for.
Correct.
We need to get
Once
down
we
to
do,
that.
we can do it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this, or do Chris and I have our marching orders?
Move forward.